With workers now locked out at the ports of Montreal and Vancouver, and Canada Postal Workers now issuing a 72-hour strike notice, concern is growing about the impact of these labor disputes on Canada's economy. The federal Labour Minister, Steve McKinnon, weighed in on the port lockout in Montreal, urging both sides to do the work to reach an agreement. The Employers Association locked out nearly 1,200 longshore workers when they rejected a final contract offer. And then on the West Coast, contract negotiations scheduled for this week, well, those have been called off. For a closer look at the strike and the impact it could have on consumers, we're joined this morning from Montreal by Barry Eidlin, professor of sociology at McGill University. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back, and I apologize in advance. My feline research assistants are not here with me today, so you'll just have to do with me.
It's okay, but I will miss the cats. Hey, listen, what was not in that offer to the port workers in Montreal that they felt that they just couldn't accept it?
Yeah, so the big issue on the Montreal ports is scheduling. This is something that workers care about deeply because it affects their day-to-day life on the job. You know, if you wake up one day and then all of a sudden you have to be at work and you're planning to be somewhere else to take care of a family issue, a medical issue, that can wreak havoc with your home life and your personal life. And that's not something that you can necessarily put a dollar value on. And so I think the Employers Association has been really emphasizing the wage package and not emphasizing these really core issues that affect workers' day-to-day lives on the job, like scheduling predictability.
You know, we talked about what you can't put a price tag on, but here's something that we do know is $1.2 billion in goods are going to be affected daily from those two ports. That's $800 million in BC, $400 million in Montreal. You know, the CEO of the Port of Montreal yesterday saying we're just days away from starting to feel this. So how will it be felt and affected by Canadian businesses and consumers?
Well, yes, this obviously has a dramatic economic impact. This is the logistics network that keeps the Canadian economy humming on a day-to-day basis, and the global economy. That's the point. The point is that the economic pressure is what brings the parties to the table. And what we have here now is a lockout situation. This is the employers voluntarily shutting down their operations. But unlike a strike situation where workers withdraw their labor for the purpose of pressuring the employer to come back to the table, the lockout is actually aimed not at pressuring the workers, but pressuring the federal government with the expectation that they will intervene. So whereas the strike situation is aimed at shoring up the collective bargaining process, the lockout situation is aimed at circumventing it, which ultimately has negative consequences for the overall collective bargaining environment.
Yeah, it is really pulling the emergency hatch. And this was debated in the House of Commons earlier this year. You know, the fact that the federal government got involved in the rail strike and the workers were saying, look, this is our right to be able to do this. We've now got postal workers issuing a strike notice. That could start as soon as Friday. How does that change the pressure on the government to then get involved in these kind of labor disputes?
Yes, it certainly does increase the pressure that, you know, we have all these disputes going on. What's important to recognize, though, is that these are recurring issues. At the Port of Montreal, you know, they've been repeatedly going on strike or having labor disputes every few years because they're not addressing the fundamental issues. And when you short circuit the collective bargaining process through back to work legislation, through binding arbitration, you often don't get at the core issues that are driving the dispute in the first place. And so you're ending up kicking the can down the road and laying the groundwork for future labor disruptions.
So best advice in this situation is let the process do what it's supposed to do, even if that is a stress and a strain on consumers?
Well, exactly. That's the pressure that keeps the parties at the table and gets an agreement done, right? We wouldn't need collective bargaining if the issues were easy to resolve. These are issues where there are fundamental disagreements, and you need that element of pressure, that pressure cooker environment to get the agreement. And oftentimes what happens is that we have these high stakes things, the parties seem very far apart until they're not. And it's really that pressure of the economic disruption that creates that pressure environment that gets the agreement done. So I think, like what we saw with the Air Canada pilots, a strong statement from the labor minister saying the collective bargaining process needs to work here is what's needed to get the agreement done.
Barry Eidlin, I missed your cats, but I enjoyed our conversation very much. I'm sure we'll be talking again later this week. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.